Hi, my name is Caleb D. Wilson. I believe that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah according to Jewish standards. And today we're going to be reviewing an article that my rabbi, Darin Katz, wrote about why you should avoid Scripture. We're also going to be talking about 4 common fallacies when dealing with Christians and why their theology ends up falling flat. If you would please consider to like and comment on this video and subscribe. I do make this content to educate people about the Jewishness of Jesus, so every like and comment really helps. Okay, so we're going to be reacting to this article that I just thought was so fascinating. In this article, Darin is going to explain to us his reasoning why we shouldn't use Scripture, which sounds it sounds almost heretical to say that we should avoid using Scripture. But let's just read it and see what happens. So the question was posed on Quora, and Darin is one of the most notable rabbis on Messianic Judaism on Quora. And so he answered this question: should people be teaching from Scripture in our day? So let's read what Darin wrote. I think 99% of people should avoid it. Here are the reasons why. Not being sure that you have an ongoing opportunity to communicate with the audience students for an undisclosed amount of time. Anytime anyone stands up to teach anyone in any context, there is a very personal and intimate experience about to happen. The time anyone spends in another person's company is time which can never be recalled or reversed. This is what makes interaction between people so vitally important in terms of the impact it can have on any of the parties involved. Depending on what you are planning to teach, are you sure you can do it effectively in a single conversation? Can you be sure that in that single interaction, you can make all the pieces fit in terms of your message? Who is this person you're teaching in the moment going to interact with when they leave you? How will they convey the information you have shared? Will they do it accurately? Will they mess your message up and inadvertently cause you to be a false teacher without you even knowing? These are some of the questions you should ask yourself before you open your mouth to share about the Scriptures in common contexts. Wow, that's pretty good so far. I mean, basically what I'm getting out of it is you should really examine your audience. You should understand what your message is, how you're articulating that message. Could they hear that and misrepresent what you said, misrepresent that scripture, and misrepresent the context that you were presenting to those people? I think this so far is really good. Not knowing enough about the audience. There you go. I know of a woman in the Catholic Church, for example, who had a very negative experience with a religious leader who responded to her question on something in the scripture with the comment, "The Bible is a dead book." The lady who approached this leader in a religious context never again approached religion. One single event. That is all it takes to make impact in someone's life, which is both exciting and dangerous. For the sake of teaching people from Scripture, this means that you should be very careful about jumping on opportunities to teach everyone in every context. Nobody is a blank canvas. Everyone has a backstory and a worldview which is in some ways, some senses, set in stone, and in other senses, malleable. Wow, that story is like really crazy that just one moment you have with that person and you say something bad and that person never comes back. Whew, yeah, that's scary to think about. Like, especially for me as somebody who's an educator. Like, you might, whoever you are, might be listening to this for the very first time, and I could say something to you that would flip that switch on for you to go to religion, or I could say something that would totally make you not want religion ever again. So that is so true. Like, that is pretty scary to think about that. Okay, moving on. Lacking qualification through education. We don't just let we don't let just anyone operate on our bodies. We expect to find doctors in medical industry regulated spaces. We look for qualifications, certificates, and referrals within the already established medical community. What I have found in over 20 years of this very kind of ministry work is that the only religion that seems to think it is a free for all when coming to dissecting the religious text happens to be Christianity. In Judaism, the floor is not nearly as open. As a Jew and a rabbi, I have had to and still have to work incredibly hard to earn the right to speak in any context, and I have no problem with the high standard. Even I am concerned with the complete openness I find with people who will readily even listen to me without testing me. I have had people sitting in the Christian space, but learning about Jesus' Jewishness, throw themselves at me in vulnerability, giving me unbridled access to their lives when they know nothing about me. This is irresponsible. For example, as a rabbi, I distinguish between a number of different modes of communication interaction I can have with the average person. I don't mind if anyone listens to public content I made, such as this space. However, there is always a limit on the nature of the content and what can be done with it. When people approach me and ask to study with me, I have a number of questions I ask them before I will even consider it. You need to ask questions of potential students and, yes, potential teachers. If I feel safe and comfortable pulling you into my inner circle of study, I am inviting you on a very personal journey with me. We will be sharing our lives in a sense. This will cost us both in a relative sense. There is a difference between expository teaching, revealing a context in the text, and what we in Judaism call halacha, aka binding ruling law, in a community. So if you are not a committed member in the community I lead, I will never give you halacha or ruling from scripture. We need more teachers and students of scripture to know the difference and strictly enforce this standard. Don't let just anyone pray for you, specifically in terms of laying hands on you. And as expected, do not be hasty to lay hands on anyone else. 1 Timothy 5:22. I really like that. Because as a teacher, you're inviting people to take part with you in your personal life. You're sharing your life with them. So what I really like about what Darin is saying is like he understands the responsibility of being a teacher, not just what we teach, but the fact that you're sharing a personal space with somebody. I think that's like really cool. Okay, let the people of the text speak for themselves. Read any of my content on any platform, and you will find how comfortably outspoken I am about defending the call of Israel to be the teachers to the nations before anyone else. Romans 3 and Romans 9, where Paul, the Jewish rabbi, speaks to Gentiles and reminds them concerning God's order when it comes to the content of Scripture being left in the hands of Israel. The Bible is a living phenomena. It is not, as the Catholic priest told the lady I mentioned previously, a dead book. Not only is God alive, so is Jesus, and so am I, a Jew. Israel by design, God's design, the teacher for the nations. We live the story of the text. It is our history. It pertains to our ancestors. I say this as a son of Aaron, the Levite, brother of Moses. My family has retained that identity marker since the time of Aaron. That is incredible. I am not suggesting that Gentiles have no right to ever open a Bible and speak from the text. I believe the Spirit has drawn Gentiles into the body of Israel through Jesus. However, I think Gentiles need to respect the text they claim to love and want to share. Gentile teachers of Scripture are, at an absolute minimum, you should let anything you are going to teach to anyone be filtered through the lens of a Jewish source. It does not necessarily have to be a rabbi, but with so many rabbis available around the world, there is no reason you can't have access to a rabbi who is willing to support you and your congregation with this kind of cultural insight. Get this right, according to Scripture, and even if you are teaching in your own community, you will in fact be teaching through the teachers God put in place, Israel. Wow, that's pretty deep. I really like that he ended on solidifying the importance of Jews being the teachers to the Gentiles, to the world. How he solidifies the Jewishness of the gospel. And in a calm but firm way, he reminds Gentiles, which I did in the last episode, that we have to take a place of humility when we come to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We don't come in and say, yeah, you do this, yeah, you do that, Jews. We come in and we realize, not that we're less than Jews, not that we are supposed to sit and shut up, but we're supposed to take a place of humility. We are the ones who need to be re-educated, to learn Jewishness. We can't learn Jewishness by ourselves. It is only through Jewish perspective that we can learn how to appropriately represent the Scriptures. Hi guys, I just wanted to talk to you real quick about this book, Jesus in Context, Why a Jewish Jesus Matters to Christian Believers. It's written by my friends, Rabbi Darin Katz and Paul Edwards. This book has totally transformed my understanding of who Jesus really was from his own culture, from his own people. It will cover a range of topics such as, was discipleship a new fad? Was Jesus disassociating from Judaism? Did he have a bar mitzvah? A lot of things that doesn't strike from a Christian perspective as Jewish, but if you buy this book, it will give you a light into the things that Jesus did. And so I'm going to have a description below that's going to give you a link to buy this book. I would highly recommend, if you want to learn more about the authentic and real Jesus, highly recommend you buy this book. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let's get back to what we're doing. Okay, so this portion of the video, I want to talk to you guys about 4 common fallacies that Christians make when they engage with me and other Jewish inspired, influenced, or just simply Jewish theologians. So the first one I want to go over is this phrase that's put out called, I'm not debating or I'm not arguing. I'm having a conversation. So usually this comes about when someone has been made aware that their points are not quite as solid as they thought they would be. And one of the reasons why people do this is because, well, I interact with mostly Americans. So I'm just going to speak from the experience of American. Americans don't like to talk about these things. They don't like to talk about religion or politics or anything that they think is divisive. They don't like to be tested on whether they know things. They're very emotional people. And so these conversations are just taboo. So they think that they don't have to defend what they have to say. So oftentimes when I expose people to their misconceptions about things, what happens is that they will propose an idea in opposition to my idea. Okay, and then most of the time they will, if they're responsible, at least the way in their minds being responsible, they would cite evidence. So I'm going to show you right below. Here is the definition of arguing. Arguing is literally to propose an idea and cite evidence. So when people oppose you, there's no problem with opposing, and there's nothing wrong with arguing. What happens is that people try to, when they don't have answers to things, especially Americans, they will try to flip the script on you and get away from defending their theology, defending their points, and make it seem like they're the victim. Like, how dare I point out the logical inconsistencies with your argument, your idea that you were presenting. So they will say, "Well, I wasn't in this this to have a debate or to have an argument. I was in this to have a conversation." And they think that a debate is different than a conversation. Now, there's something I think is worth considering. When you do have arguments, when you are proposing ideas, you should ask a lot of questions. I should make sure, it's my responsibility to make sure that I can understand where that person is coming from. One of the things I love, one of my favorite quotes right now is, to be a good critic, you have to understand where that person is coming from. So you should ask a lot of questions. However, there does come a point where you do have to propose your idea. You have to propose what you are trying to get across. Now, I like to try to do that through questions, where I lead people through questions to the answer. And I think that's the best thing you can do, actually. You make the other person admit the answer that they already know. So I would encourage you that if someone tries to throw that against you, literally you should do this. If someone says to you, "I don't want to have a debate, I want to have a conversation," take out your phone and say, "Hey, give me just a couple minutes." Take out your phone and say, "Okay, I just want to know, in this conversation, have you at all proposed ideas?" They should say yes. I don't know why they would say no. They should say, "Yeah, I proposed an idea." "Okay. Did you cite evidence for that idea?" And they should say, "Yeah, this is my evidence for this thing." And then just calmly just show them, "Okay, I just want to show you, this is what the definition of arguing." And just take out your phone and just show them the definition. Now, what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Most people are just going to shut down. They're not going to want to continue this, because that's what people do when they shut down. They shut down because they just don't have answers, and they're too overwhelmed. So I would encourage you that when that does happen, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when it happens. Okay, so I want to go over. Let me go over the next one. The next one I want to go over is this fallacy that whoever uses the most scripture is correct. So oftentimes what I find is that people will, when they are posing an idea that I have proposed, and they're arguing, they will say, "Hey, well, this scripture in Galatians says something different." And I say, "Okay, well, let's go into what Galatians was talking about there." And then they might go, "Oh, well, hold on, but then Romans over here says this." And then, but then it's backed up by First Thessalonians, and then it's backed up by Nahum, and then it's backed up by Revelation, and they go into 5-6 different directions. What you need to do is say, "Hold on, let's focus on one scripture at a time. Let's focus on one thing, one scripture, understand that context, understand what the writer was trying to say." So what happens is also within that is kind of a sub fallacy is that people will throw these things out without contextualizing how the scripture applies to the situation or the topic that you guys are having. So, for example, I just had a friend who did not like the fact that I simply just exposed his theology. That's really what I did. I never said anything mean. I just exposed that his theology is wrong. And he threw at me Titus 3:9, which says, don't have useless quarrels about Torah or genealogy. Now, what's funny is that he didn't even explain how I was doing that. He just posted it. He didn't even post the whole verse. He just said Titus 3:9. If you cannot contextualize scripture, it is useless. I mean, scripture is literally useless. I know that sounds heretical to say, but it's literally useless if you can't contextualize it. If you can't learn how to apply that into the situations, into the topics, the conversations, the debates, arguments, you literally are wasting your time. So he posted this, and I'm like, you offer no context as to how this applies to what I'm doing. Now, ironically, what's funny too is that he uses this basically at the end as to say, well, you know what, you're just starting a useless quarrel with me, Caleb. You're really just starting a useless quarrel with me. Well, you know, holding you accountable to the standards of the Bible and the Torah is useless. In fact, why not just apply that to everything, every opportunity to hold somebody accountable? Why don't we just throw out the court systems? Why don't we throw out every hearing? Any opportunity to hold somebody accountable is a useless quarrel, right? So do you see that he did not contextualize how this verse applies? So now I have to find my own understanding of what you're trying to say. So my encouragement to you is when you provide scripture, you need to not play this game of Russian roulette with scriptures, just firing them off. You need to take the time and walk through every scripture to see what the context is. And you also need to make sure that you contextualize what that scripture is supposed to mean in relation to the topic at hand. An argument from silence. The idea behind argument from silence is that because the text does not say something, it means it didn't happen. So, for example, we were having a conversation where in Acts 21, Paul makes a sacrifice. Now, does it say he made a sacrifice? An animal sacrifice, I should say. He made an animal sacrifice. Did he make an animal sacrifice? Well, not literally according to the text. It doesn't literally say Paul made a sacrifice. So, the idea would be, from arguments from silence, is that because it wasn't written that he literally said Paul made a sacrifice, it automatically means that it didn't happen. The problem with this is that argument from silence is literally using nothing as your evidence. And not only that, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because it wasn't written down doesn't mean it didn't happen. For example, I live here in America. If I were to write down, I celebrated July 4th today in my diary, if I had a diary. 300 years later, people find that And they say, oh, okay, interesting. Caleb celebrated July 4th on this day. Okay, so what's the cultural context behind July 4th? Okay, so we have fireworks, we have blue, white, and red, and we remember this day as the Declaration of Independence. What if someone says, well, hold on, he didn't say that though. He didn't say that there was fireworks or blue, white, and red, and that he was thinking about the Declaration of Independence. So therefore, Caleb wasn't celebrating July 4th on that day. What if I had just not specified because I was speaking to an audience that understood? They understood what was going on. So going to Acts 21, it says that Paul purified himself. He was already purified. Purified is past tense. It's in the past tense. Now, he was going under a Nazirite vow, and at the end of purification, he would make a sacrifice. So, Paul being already purified, going under the Nazirite vow in number 6, made an animal sacrifice. So it doesn't have to expressly say that. And the writer, I'm guessing it was Luke, didn't expressly say Paul made a sacrifice, but if you understand the cultural context of those things, the Nazirite vow, the purification, you would understand as a Jew that he made an animal sacrifice. So that's one of those things that you have to consider, is that if people are saying there's no evidence here because it was written, that's a fallacy. That's literally a fallacy. You don't have to, because something's not written doesn't mean it didn't happen. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you please consider to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.